Hello, and welcome to Art Talk, our wonderful weekly talk show where we talk about art and the people that make art happen. And each week we have a different topic and a different focus, and I know that you're going to enjoy our program today. I am Rona Rutchik, your host, and Charlotte Hennegan is my guest, and she will be talking about arranging flowers. The art of flowers is something I know you've in fact done yourselves. You've taken some flowers and you've put them in a vase and you've tried for them to look particularly nice, and you probably did a nice job. Today we're going to learn from a florist designer who does a spectacular job. Charlotte, I'm so glad you came to the studio today where we can talk about the way in which you use the artistry that you have to make flower design and flower arrangements really wonderful. They seem, when you make them, to be an arrangement different from everyone else's. Do you think that people take the art of flower arrangement for granted?
I think a lot of people in the United States take flowers for granted, number one. I'm not sure about flower arranging. I would say our culture, for example, people can walk into a room and probably if it's a male-female population, half of the men won't even notice the flowers. And the women will notice the flowers. Whereas I think in European countries that have a lot more knowledge about flowers, their history of flowers is much older than ours. I believe the appreciation of flowers is greater there. It's not to say we're not learning in this country, and I believe we are, but we have some catching up to do.
Is it because in foreign countries outdoor design includes much more flowers, that people are more used to looking at flowers beautifully arranged or beautifully color-coded, color-fielded, you know, lots of reds or lots of yellows? I'm thinking, for instance, of the Netherlands.
Right.
And they probably have a much longer history of flowers being beautifully around them.
I believe it's in their culture in the European countries, particularly in the Netherlands. But I can think of one of the greatest examples would be in the European countries, for example, men and women have been giving flowers forever to each other. And in this country, I still have men who, when they buy a flower, ask me to wrap it up in brown paper so that they won't be seen in public carrying flowers.
That's a non-macho kind of idea.
So those are the type of obstacles we still have to get over. I'm not saying it's getting better.
It is.
Every day.
Yes.
But those obstacles still exist here.
Interesting, when I was in your shop the other day, I happened to notice, I'm a big audience watcher. I love to see, and I'm very interested in who is enjoying the arts and who they are and how they're enjoying them, and the connection between arts and audience. And your audience that particular day was made up primarily of men. Men came in to pick up flowers, picked out flowers outside on your wagon and came in to have them wrapped. I happened to notice, I don't know, do you think that's somewhat unusual?
No, and I would re-emphasize that I think it's getting better, and I think because my shop, I have tried over the years to make it a shop where everybody is comfortable. Children are comfortable, old people are comfortable, poor people are welcome, wealthy people, everybody feels comfortable in a flower shop. At least in my shop, I try to make it that way. I know when I was a little girl, I don't know why, I can't explain it, or maybe I can, but I was intimidated by flower shops. When I went into the flower shop, I felt like, I don't know if I can afford this, I don't know if I'm supposed to be here, I don't know if I'm supposed to touch anything. And I think that that did persist in flower shops, and I think that the whole concept of flowers has changed now, so it's a feel, touch, smell, pick up type of a thing. And I like to see everybody walk out of the store, not just for the business aspect, but people should have flowers in their homes, enjoy them.
And I understand that one of the things you're interested in is that flowers last. So in your arrangements, you'll mix some flowers that last long and some flowers that are more fragile. Is that an idea that one should have in mind when they put flowers together too?
I would say that attitude probably comes more from a commercial end of it. For example, I will benefit more from the business angle of it, if a customer is satisfied for 7 days as opposed to 3 days with a flower arrangement, they're going to enjoy it more. And for that reason, I like to use flowers that will last. But sometimes there's occasions, for example, you just want a burst of color for a party or whatever, and you just need that for an instant. And then I'm not so consistent with that policy.
I see. Well, let's see, take a trip to your studio and see what it is you have there and how you work. You brought into the foreground.
So this morning, one of my orders is for a customer who would like a wreath for her husband's secretary, who has been employed for quite a few years. Today's her last day. And she came in yesterday and saw a wreath that I had made out of dried eucalyptus, which was this piece here. But with just the dried eucalyptus in it, it had the feeling of a more contemporary taste, I would say. And we both agreed that this woman, after we discussed her home and what her style was in her clothing, in her dress, in her daily activities, was more traditional than contemporary. So I've been working on this wreath, trying to figure out how I would add to it to make it more traditional. I use this wall here because a nice white wall is a good backdrop, just plain and simple, to see what I need to add to it. This tool that I'm working with, whether I'm working with dried or silks or fresh, is a simple way to add my ingredients uniformly and give me a product in the end that is easier for me to work with. Things that I've added into this to make it more traditional are some copper beech leaves here. Actually, these are oak leaves that have been dyed artificial. So we have a real leaf that's been added some artificial coloring into it. And that's given me a little bit more texture and color into the wreath. At that point, after I added that into it, I decided it just wasn't enough. It needed a little bit more. And I moved on to an artificial berry that's probably some type of a blackberry here, I'm not sure, but it's a synthetic product. Added into this, it has a realistic look to it. The berries, after the berries, I added some dried blue hydrangea into it, just a few pieces here and there to fill it out and give it some more texture. And I think I'm just about done. I don't see too many more bare spots on it, and she's coming in to pick it up in a few minutes. But when I look at it on the wall, what I'm looking for, I want to make sure that my color is distributed somewhat evenly. I want to make sure I don't have any bare spots. I'm looking to see if my berries are distributed evenly. And what I'm not looking for in this wreath is I'm not really looking for a focal point. I don't want somebody to look at this and see something on it right away. It just has sort of a uniform meld of ingredients in it. My berries are pretty much uniform also. And I'm going to give it a good shake to make sure things are on there and not going to fall off on my customer when she picks it up. The last detail, sort of a mechanical point that needs to be taken care of, is make sure that my hook, where she's going to hang it on the wall, this is my hook here, and it's made out of chenille. I want to make sure that if I do hang this up, it does that. I know that this is the top of the wreath, and it still has that uniform look to it. And I think I'm just about done with this wreath for now. I'm going to add a few balloons on it, if you can believe that, but that's going to say, "We'll miss you, thanks, you did a great job," to this gentleman's secretary who's leaving after many years. I think that's about it on this wreath, and I'm going to move on to a fresh flower vase that has to go out this morning for somebody celebrating a 90th birthday that needs to be showy and spectacular. The project I'm working on right now is in order for a customer who's requested something very showy and spectacular. The reason being, her mother-in-law is celebrating her 90th birthday today. And she'd like the order to arrive at the office where her mother-in-law still works, if you can believe it, and have sort of what I call that quality when it arrives where people are going to say, "Oh my God, look at the flowers." And that's what we're trying to create here. So the parameters she gave me when she ordered the flowers are showy and spectacular. But my customer also, while she was here, picked out her own flowers. She's requested that I incorporate Gerbers into it. Those are the colorful flowers here that I happen to have in-house because we have a wedding this weekend that we're going to do that has a Costa Rican theme to it. And these Costa Rican colors would be bright, colorful, showy, just like this customer wants for her 90-year-old mother-in-law. So she picked out the Gerbers. Her other request in the order was to incorporate some of this cotton, which is something we've never really had in-house before until about 2 weeks ago. It's a product that has come onto the market because people have shown an interest in it. I don't know, you could have sold cotton 10 years ago. But now people are more familiar with flowers, they know more about them, they're educated more about them, and they like to see things that are natural. So certainly this cotton has a natural look to it, and I'm hopeful that I can incorporate it into this arrangement and make it look attractive. Although some people might say it's ugly, I think it's pretty neat. The other thing that I'm going to work for in this vase is I'm thinking color, and I'm thinking a lot of color, and I was excited that she was enthusiastic about the idea of color, because as people get older, I believe their vision isn't as clear as it was when they were younger, so consequently I like to use bright, vivid colors for them so that in fact they can see the arrangement. And sometimes I have customers who request scent in their arrangements because they want people to be able to smell the flowers also. And then, of course, we have customers who request no scent in the arrangements. So it's a service-oriented industry we have here, trying to create pieces for people that they'll be happy with. When I'm making an arrangement, I'm going to concentrate on not making it uniform. I try the best I can to mimic nature. So I often try to think about when I was a kid going for a walk in the woods, and you would sit down on a rock and look at things. You never saw things perfect. If you saw a flower coming up, there was always a flower with a little bud coming up right next to it. Or if you saw leaves on a branch, they were never perfect on the branch. There'd be 2 or 3, skip a space, 1 or 2, sometimes none. So in that respect, I try to do my flowers in the same way. Another really important thing that I think most people forget about when you're arranging is how important proportion is. Things have to be in proportion. They can't be too big, they can't be too small. They have to just fit. So a good rule of thumb when I'm starting out is I always try to remember that my flowers should be 1.5 to 2 times the height of my container. This container is this high, so I know I'll still be in proportion if my flowers go this height again, and I can even go that high, and visually things will still be in proportion. My personal tastes often go to things that are more simple than this, but I'm having fun with this. This is going to look good to me when it's done, but it's very, very busy. And busy usually doesn't complement everybody's home. If I stay more simple, I can complement more people's homes with the flowers. As you've noticed, there's also some branches in here. This is something called winterberry that I went out over the weekend and cut behind my house. And we love to use it for the texture and the color. The other thing I have to stop and remind myself right now is that when I'm working with orders, the other parameter I've been given, other than showy and spectacular, use Gerbras, use cotton, is I have a price range that I have to work in. So although my taste would go to keep adding and adding, because I love to work with flowers, but I know that I'm going to try to work in a certain price range for this customer. And I haven't stopped yet to count, but I kind of think I'm at the right price range for what she wants to spend on this product. But I'm going to try and see if I can incorporate a little bit more pink into this without making it garish. And I think the pink is going to work. And I really want to put in this pink rose, so I'm going to put it in. And I'm not quite done, but I think it's going to work. Now, in terms of transportation, another thing I have to think about is how is my driver going to get this to the customer without it all falling apart on him. So I have to put in some what I call filler into this so that the arrangement won't move around too much in the vehicle. And I'm hopeful and optimistic it will get to the customer looking just like it did when it left my workstation. That's why I'm adding this called Springeri into this vase of flowers. I need another piece of cotton to balance off that cotton on that side. But cotton's new to me, so I have to experiment a little bit with it. There's a nice balance there. And a little shot of yellow. When I'm finished with this order, we're going to move on to a dried arrangement that needs to be done today and reworked for a customer because the size and proportion that I talked about before is way off on this piece. And it's for a commercial environment. And that is it's a big project, it's a big piece, but I'll show you, I think it's a better example of proportion that you'll see when I show it to you. So I'm going to wind down on this piece now. I'm almost done. Two more pieces. The nice thing about this arrangement, too, that I liked with mixed flowers, is that the customer will have an opportunity to watch some things die, right, that will die quickly. Roses don't last that long, but other things that are going to last a long time in this arrangement. These lilies will have a good week of opening up, and they're just at the beginning of their beauty. There's 6 buds on these, so those are all going to open up. My cotton stays as cotton. Nothing else different happens with that. The roses will open and go by. The Gerbers will last for a while. But ultimately, in the end, she'll have a week to 14 days to even 2 weeks, depending on the temperature in the house, of enjoying flowers. And if I make it to 90, I sure hope somebody sends me a special arrangement on my birthday.
Charlotte, you seem to take such a personal interest in each of the things that you create. How often do you hear from your customers when the piece arrives? Do they always call and say, wow, or only sometimes?
I would say only sometimes.
Really?
But I think it's a fact of being in business, and I'm always happy. Actually, I'm happy if I don't hear, because I believe it, ascribe by the theory, no news is good news. Not that customers don't call and compliment you on a piece of work that you've done, or they're particularly happy. But generally speaking, I think it's a human phenomenon that people are happy with it, but really forget to call or let you know. Even, for example, if you went to a restaurant and had dinner and the dinner was particularly good, you might not send a message to the chef, but you had a good dinner.
And you might return.
That's right.
And of course, your customers, the customers that I know anyway, are long-lasting customers. And I suppose in the fact that they come back for something else, whether it's for a similar kind of thing or for a completely different kind of thing, just by being there again, know that you have them in mind and that you've got something in your hand that is connected to them that you can do again, don't you think?
Oh, strongly. I mean, I think one of my top priorities is a repeat business. I mean, I want to see this customer happy, and I know if they are happy, they will come back. But I think that we've also based the business on, in trying to make people happy, is that you have to extract from them what they're looking for in flowers.
Well, we'll talk about the communications that you must have with the public relations with your customers and what kind of things they can say to you to help you know really what's on their mind after we come back, because first we're going to stop for a minute for a public service announcement that our people are going to enjoy, looking at art that's around our neighborhoods. We'll be right back.
Art is a process that fills our lives. See it, enjoy it. This public service announcement is brought to you by the Griffis Arts Center, New London, Connecticut.
About the kind of communications that she would have with a customer. Charlotte, what would I say to you if I came into your shop and I wanted to order something?
Well, hopefully my job is to guide you along the right path. That most people don't know what to say because they're not that familiar with the world of flowers. So,
But of course, in your shop, if I came in, I would see all of those beautiful flowers that we showed at the earlier videotape. So you have exposed and available for me to see or ask or touch or smell,
right.
And I could say to you, you know, what are these white things? What is this cotton? Or, oh, I love the traditional rose.
Right.
And then we would be able to communicate starting that way?
well, I tried it for myself and my employees to train them to extract this information from the customer. I want to find out what their tastes are, whether they are from a traditional style, do they like things contemporary, do their colors go more towards earth tones, do their colors go more towards a feminine side. And there's a lot of information that has to be passed back and forth to try to, ultimately in the end product, I want something that they're going to look at and love and will excite them. But I also am optimistic that my job will be, whether it's traditional home, which we have a lot of in New England, or it's a contemporary home or occasion either, that the flower style that I do will mix textures, colors, combinations that will excite them no matter what.
So now you're talking about art. You're talking about textures, and you're talking about form and harmony of color.
Correct.
And shape. Those are the kinds of things we talk about when we look at paintings.
Correct.
Is there a correlation?
I strongly believe so. I believe that, and I couldn't honestly say I have a strong art background or education in it, but I know since a child I've appreciated going to museums and looking at paintings. And sometimes I've wondered, why do I like that painting? And it could be a contemporary art, it could be a traditional, it could be impressionistic, but why do I like it? I like it because of the colors. Is that what's making me enjoy it? Is it because of the content? And the same thing with flowers.
Mm-hmm. Very much the same, I think. Well, we have another piece of tape that we took when we visited your workshop. And I think that this example will show all of our viewers the beautiful way in which you can make an art form out of shape, form, design, and color. Let's take another look now.
The next endeavor I have to work with this afternoon is going to be a project with a silk, or actually a dried arrangement for a commercial account of ours, who wants me to rework this arrangement for his business. It's a beauty salon, because his colors and also the location where he wants this arrangement have changed since when I mated this for him last year. Last year his color scheme was in the raspberries, mauves, shades. This year he's working more in khakis, pea greens, beiges. So he can still work with these dried ingredients because they're perfect color scheme, and actually they're not too dusty. I'll be able to use them again. But the bigger problem we have is that the shape that I made this arrangement, and I spoke earlier about proportion, the shape that I made this arrangement fit perfectly for what he needed last year. It went in the corner where there was an empty, voided space. Now he needs it to go on top of a column in his front window, but because the front window has an architectural sort of border around it, visually when you look at the arrangement on top of the column, I need the arrangement to go out this way as opposed to my vertical lines, which this had strong vertical lines with branches. Then I worked with the Chinese silver dollar, then we worked with grasses, and then our low flower on the bottom was hydrangea. I'm going to rework this so it'll fit in his front window and have more horizontal lines. I picked a container that's going to have khakis and brown shades in it that'll go with his beauty salon. And I'm going to make the arrangement in an all the way around, because people see this arrangement from the street outside. When they come in and they're having their hair done, they can also see it from their seats. So it has to look good all the way around. That's important. And I spoke earlier about proportion. So I have to keep in mind when I'm making this arrangement, I need to make it in proportion to the container, proportion to a column that he has that the container goes on, and proportion to the window that it's going to go in on the street. With that in mind, I can go to work and pull this apart and move on to redesigning it for his beauty parlor. As you can see, the piece is starting to take some new lines onto it, stronger horizontal lines than vertical. So I'm moving in the right direction with the piece. My strongest lines right now that I can see are going to be in this branch that I've taken and broken down, so that I've elongated it with that. I'm going to soften it somewhat, this piece, with some neat grass that I love to work with. When you watch this grass and you cut, this is pampas grass that grows outside. You'll see it along the roadside out by Harkness, your state parks, Waterford, Stonington, wherever in this area. But once you cut off that branch with that grass on it and you look at a piece like that, I mean, it's endless, the lines and dimension that it has. It looks great up high in a piece. It looks great down low and brings your lines down visually so you can carry it through. It can be tightened up and used as a filler inside, but it's one of my favorites as a dried ingredient. And I also think this arrangement now is going to take a little bit different feeling than it did in the mauve vase. It's not as harsh. It was a little bit more contemporary in the first piece. I think I'm going to soften it up, but it still has a more masculine feel to it than a feminine feel, I think. But it will be appealing, and it will look good in his location, I think, when I'm done. But I have a ways to go to use up all of his product, which is my first choice.
I think that natural arrangement absolutely showed us how beautifully form and texture and color and design work when you're dealing with an artist who knows how to put the characteristics of art together with flowers. Charlotte, it looks as if just about anything is possible to be used in an arrangement. Everything from natural grasses outside and the winter berries that you used in the cut flower arrangement a little earlier, to beautiful garden flowers that have been dried. Yes?
Well, I think that's the challenge of staying on the cutting edge in this industry, is to always be finding things that people don't expect to find in their flowers.
Well, even earlier when you were doing the beautiful wreath, you added some artificial flowers.
Right,
so
correct.
Even that's allowed?
And I think anything's allowed in this art
guess.
form. You know, whatever is, again, if it makes it so that it's pleasing to the eye for whatever reason,
But
then
there are no
do it.
rules about natural flowers or traditional flowers. In this arrangement here, we have a combination of an exotic cotton and a traditional classic rose. And didn't you say earlier that these were some of the things you used in the wreath? These are painted or sprayed, but real to start
Exactly.
with. So there are no rules.
No, I don't believe that. I mean, I believe there's rules in floral design that definitely exist, especially if you're in a garden club. Their rules are very strict.
I see.
I think the angle I'm coming in from, it's open territory.
I see.
But you can violate it easily and fall on your face pretty quickly.
Well,
without
probably the characteristics that an artist uses in terms of form and design and color and harmony, those rules probably, would you say, are more important than the rules of whether it should be artificial versus
I agree.
grass versus...
I agree.
As long as it works in an artistic way then it's allowable in an arrangement. And
I
it will
believe so.
help to make something pleasing.
And I believe that, I think I've mentioned it before, I mean, that was one of my, in teaching myself floral design, was one of the biggest things I had to learn, and I still learn it every day today, is proportion is very important in floral design, and that seems to be something that is always a challenge, is finding proportions. And then using what you had mentioned, the exotics with your traditional, it's that edge, it's that you're looking for, the unexpected that makes it beautiful, because people want to see new things. They've seen the old, they've seen, I love carnations and mums, and I have no problem using them, but people want to see new things. They want to see something that excites them.
Or maybe those usual, more ordinary garden flowers used in a new way, or in combination.
Exactly.
And that's where the idea of harmony comes from.
Exactly.
So that it's a song, if you will, or a harmony, if you will, that knocks your socks off, because perhaps it's new for you this moment, and it can say for you in a floral arrangement either what you've already said, only more so, or perhaps it may say for you what you can't say yourself because there are miles between you and the receiver, or even a communication problem.
I agree.
Yeah.
In fact, I know that I have customers that will request that I not use carnations or mums in an arrangement because their tastes don't go in that direction. But sometimes you can be creating a piece, and just because you need that color of that particular miniature carnation, and nothing else in the floral world is going to give me that color, at least what's available to me today, and I need that color, I can still tuck it into an arrangement, and I'm not trying to be sneaky, but I can get it in there, and it gives me the look I want this to have, and they don't even know a miniature carnation's in there. It's just indiscreet. It gets mixed in with everything else and gives you that little touch. I sort of call it putting the salt and pepper on an arrangement, the fine-tuning of it.
I see. Well, that is the harmony. There's no question about it. And as long as you can speak with your client and you can have some trust between you and a client, then the piece is going to really be able to have a dimension of communication that through the phone, to just call a catalog kind of arrangement, just wouldn't have.
Right.
And that's why when you see an arrangement that is special, it is different, and you're not exactly sure what's so different about it, but it's different and it speaks to you far more so than something that is rather banal and just put together. Even though, I guess, flowers are intrinsically beautiful, what flower or leaf or grass is not, even just by itself in a glass of water, a pretty thing to look at.
In fact, I have to remind myself, and I often mention it to customers when they come in and they'll notice something, oh, isn't that beautiful? And I always think to myself, oh, I believe almost everything in the floral world is a weed somewhere.
Yes, but even weeds.
And that's how beautiful they are.
Sure, weeds and wildflowers and anything that is found. I suspect you drive around with the scissors in your pocket, and almost anything you see by the road that happens to strike you.
Oh, absolutely. I do. In both of my vans, I always make sure I have my clippers. In my pocketbook, I always carry a pair of clippers.
Now, you had mentioned earlier that you had done a wedding with a Costa Rican theme. And just for a moment, if you would, how does a bride, after all, that's a really special thing, say to you special things so that the flowers that will be remembered forever for her special day will be special?
Well, it becomes more involved with wedding work, and that's why wedding work involves consultations, not just a phone call conversation or the conversation when customers come in. And I had mentioned before, we try to extract that information. When we do get into weddings, it involves time, because we need to see the bride's sense of what's going to happen at this wedding, whether it's a country style, whether it's a formal, elegant affair, whether it's a walk in the woods type of a wedding. But all of those details come into play. I need to know the textures of the dresses, the style of the dresses, and ultimately come out with something that is very unique for her style wedding.
So the communication and the conversation is very important.
Correct.
Whether or not we want something dramatic, or whether or not we want something very traditional. Whether we want to knock your socks off if you're our audience, or whether or not we want to just be simple and quiet and with you at a time of perhaps sorrow. what you want to do is talk to your floral designer, and if you can, visit your floral designer so that you can pick out from the palette of colors of beautiful flowers that are available, perhaps seasonally, perhaps forever, something that says something about you as well as the artistry of the person you choose to do your flowers. We hope you enjoyed our talk today, and I know that you'll take your clippers and you'll go out into the woods and you'll pick something that you can put into a vase or a jar or even a glass of water for yourself so that you can enjoy and get your eye on the beauty of the art of flowers. See you next week. This is Art Talk, and I'm Rona Rutchik, your host.